Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. We have a very special guest for y'all this evening. I know some of y'all are going to be watching live. The numbers are already racking up. When you hear this, it's been released here in a few weeks. You'll be mad you missed the live one. And there's a little bit of opportunity to ask some questions tonight. So don't forget, if whatever social media platform you're on, if you post a comment, it should come across our screen and we'll share it up for you guys. Coach, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Well, we'll open with a little introduction for you. Of course, we kind of talked about before, your pro career probably doesn't need an introduction, but being a high school football coach is a big deal. So love to hear all about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously I was fortunate to play at Marshall University and then 11 years in the NFL and retired in 2010. And we moved to Central Kentucky actually in 2012. So it's been amazing. I've been here 13 years in August. So in the Lexington, Kentucky area, and kind of started to dip my toe into coaching a little bit with middle school ball and kind of working with my own boys. I've got 3 boys. Cole's at Gardner Webb playing, and my middle son Luke is going to University of Dayton, and I have a sophomore rising junior Gage that I'm finishing up coaching. So kind of started that way, and then as Cole moved into high school. Was really looking at schools for him to attend and really looking at the academic piece. And I attended Webb School of Knoxville in Knoxville, Tennessee, and really loved how I was prepared both athletically and academically. And so my transition into college was smooth. And so that's what I was looking for academically. And I felt like Sayre School answered those questions, but it didn't have football. It hadn't had football since 1976. And so we started having that conversation a couple years before Cole moved into high school. And I thought I was going to be behind the scenes, and they're like, well, if we're going to do this, you're going to have to do it. And so kind of had to answer the call there. And with my dad being a high school football coach for 30 years and me growing up on a Friday night bus, I've just really enjoyed using the game of football as a platform to empower student athletes to reach their full potential, both athletically and academically. And that's the most fun piece to it, is being able to be at the high school level and still be intricately involved in a young man's development.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what we all look for as a coach, right? Is that piece right there, like developing those kids and being a part of that development, because they're at such a young age, such a moldable age. You can really kind of create the good guys of the future, I guess, right? We're all talking about making winners for life or champions for life. That's kind of our mantra. So that's a good piece. So I have to ask, because my kids, I have 2 boys. Beckett is 7, Liam's 3.5. But on the calendar, they're a little bit further apart, so they'll never play football together. I didn't plan it that way, but I might get, a starting linebacker or something every year for 8 years. So did you plan it that way so your kids didn't have to compete against each other?
I did not. I did not. It did not happen that way for sure. And it was cool though that Luke learned underneath Cole. And Gage has learned underneath Luke, and it's really neat to see how all 3 are totally different, even though they come from the same 2 parents, and how they interact and act, and how even they play the quarterback position is a little bit different. So I just really enjoyed. My dad and I decided not to do that for various reasons, but we decided to, and I've really enjoyed it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been really neat, number one, to be a part of their own development, but 2, be a part of their buddies and just their life in general, and really use the game of football to help develop them there. So that's my wife and I really enjoyed that piece to it.
That's an underrated part of being a coach of your son. I've got one that's going to be a senior coming up. Is I know all the kids in that grade, so I have a pretty good idea kind of what's going on, and I'm sure you're probably the same way. I look at my backyard and there's 40 kids in our pool, and that's a really, really cool thing to get to experience. Daniel, you'll get to experience that soon.
Yeah, it is cool, Coach, because you really grow close to those kids, and when they leave, I mean, one of the hardest things, the sweetest moment in our program for me, although most of the time it's bittersweet, is that exit meeting after typically your last game that you've lost unless you won the championship. And although it's a hard time, it's just really neat to sit in that locker room. The locker room is a sacred place for me. I just feel like, number one, it's the most politically incorrect place in the history of the planet. That's why it's. But two, it's very sacred in that there's a lot of hardcore questions and answers and relationship building in there that just doesn't happen everywhere. And so having that exit meeting in that locker room is really important to me. And so that's where you get to see just guys pouring their hearts out about what the program's meant to them, what their buddies mean to them. And then typically, when you've got a class where your son has grown up in, that even makes it more special, right? And so it's so hard to take those names off the board, if you will, as you're moving on to the next season. It's almost reminds you of Friday Night Lights at the end of that movie when he's taking the names off and putting the new names up.
Yeah, so my wife is our media guide, so she was there taking pictures. She's done this now for 10 years. Takes all the pictures of the seniors. We do a banner. They're in our media guide. And I look up, it was probably maybe a week ago, and she's got the kids and she's just bawling. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she's, "Well, these are our babies." And I said, "Well,
Yeah.
you haven't seen your son yet. These are other kids, and so
Right.
it's unique." And I do want to kind of ask this one to you too. I know we're going to talk about QB development. Daniel's worked really hard. I don't want to veer too far off course, but how hard is it to go from, now you had your own sons, which makes it probably easier, but to go from the level that you played at, where it's 92 Spider XY banana, whatever, and now you're dealing with a 14-year-old. How hard was that for you?
Well, what I actually tried to do is really pull from my experiences of coaches that I felt like helped simplify my thought process, and then also help give me answers. I always hated as a quarterback where if a play was called and you didn't get what you're looking for, what's my answer? We can't just say, well, we'll chalk it up and line up, right? We've got to have an answer. So what I tried to do when I built the system, and by the way, I used your gun TRPO system as part of how we build our system, and a lot of different things there. Love a lot of things you guys do. And so, but in the passing game, what I tried to do was within every concept, make sure the read was very simple and to the point, and that they had answers versus any coverage. Because what I tell my guys, and I tell anybody that's playing the quarterback position, 75% of the time, we are not going to get what we expected, right? And so part of playing the quarterback position is, okay, what happens when we don't get what coach thought? How do I save this play for him? How can we move on to the next down? How can we still get a positive play? And so that's what I spent a lot of my time, to answer your question, was really making sure that the thought process was simple and the reads. And then also, coach, match the footwork. Like the shotgun has almost taken away the importance of footwork. You don't just get back there and catch the ball and then figure it out. Like your feet have to be tied into each read and each concept. We don't have a sixth sense as a quarterback. Our feet tell us. We've got to listen to our feet, when to get out, when to extend, when to move through a read. And so really being conscientious of that footwork within our system too was really important. So although it may seem more simple than what I was used to, at the same time, those base fundamentals are still very important, and regardless of what level you play on.
That's a great question. Before we go any further, let's knock out this quote of the week, Kenny, and then we'll do the ads, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, quote of the week. So coming out of the team theme books, we have team themes 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're doing fireworks this week. So we're finishing up team themes number 5. But the quote of the week is coming from Tony Robbins. I think the focus on it was focus. That's the name of the chapter. And the quote is, "One reason so few of us achieve what we truly want is that there is never direct focus. We never concentrate our power. Most people dabble their way through life, never deciding to master anything in particular." And I think that's I love the quote, the idea of becoming really good at what you want to do. When I got I started dabbling into fireworks in the business world. I got told this quote, the riches are in the niches. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Basically, if you can become an expert in an area, like a legit expert, you're going to be really, really good in that world. But too many times, especially for me, I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and we tend to struggle. So I thought that was a pretty good quote. I thought it kind of spoke a little bit to we're talking about quarterback development tonight. Kind of talked about, hey, if you're going to do this, be all in.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll be honest with you. I feel like that's making it just directly stabbed me right in the heart, because that's my whole life, is just trying to be good at a whole bunch of stuff and never become an expert at everything. So now I got to change my entire life, Kenny, because you're quote of the week. I'm a podcaster, football coach. I don't know what else we do. Dirt bike racer, 4-wheeler racer. We got to change it all now. That's a good one. So let's go ahead and real quick get to these ads. So if Coach, you don't mind, share some ways that a coach can make things simple for his staff and athletes. All right, if you're watching live, we're going to jump right back in the show here. We will clip in some digital ads here later for our sponsors. We'll come out of the break here. We'll go throw them a mention just to pay the bills, and then we'll move on. Appreciate that, Coach. Real quick, I know you guys probably skipped all those ads anyways, because that's what you do. I'm a podcast listener. I skip the ads. I know how that works. But the highlights, you need to know that Ace Sports is doing the best thing in the world with video boards right now, helping you cheat code your way through fundraising. So if you're looking for a way to pad the pockets, pad the stats, whatever you're going to talk about, Ace Sports is the way to do it. Mark.bridges at acesports.com. Team Builder Practice for the month of June is running a 30 days free upon sign up for Team Builder Practice. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's a great place. Once again, my favorite piece is the building up of a drill playbook or a drill book, and then you can give that to a new coach or even to a player. If you've got whatever you've got on your team that's helping you set up drills, it helps everyone understand what you're looking to get out of every drill you do. Winning Edge Performance Analytics, it's in-game analytics. You're putting in the stats as it goes. You're putting in what formation you ran and the play, instead of having the kid over there trying to jot it down in their terrible handwriting. Listen, I watched like a backup player that was injured or whatever try to write stuff down last year, and I watched coaches, and you can never read their handwriting. You can do it all digital, do it on an iPad, do it on a computer screen, whatever you want. Multiple people can be working at the same time, so not one person has to get all the info. At halftime, you can see the stats, or anytime, really. Anytime you want to print a report or bring it up on the screen, you can. But at halftime, you have something to actually go back and make corrections for with actual analytics, actual numbers. Best part of it, though, is that you get to import all that right into your huddle, and you don't have to tag film when the game's over. You've already tagged film by doing it in the game. That is Winning Edge Performance Analytics. Hop over there, and if you use the code 20OFF Coaching 101, you get 20% off your first year. So make sure you let them know that we sent you there. And last but not least, Capital Varsity Sports, Capital with an O. One-stop shop for all your sporting equipment needs. If you're sending helmets to Rydell and Shutt and whoever else that you're sending helmets to, let Mike over at Mike Holes can help you out over at Capital Varsity Sports. His stuff is going across the bottom down there. I will say it the next time I see it, because I once again forgot to add it to my notes. That's how prepared I was tonight. All right, let's jump into part one here. Coach Pennington, we'll let you answer first since you're our special guest. And you kind of started down this path a minute ago, but what are the keys to developing great quarterbacks from youth football to we want to hand them off to college coaches?
Yeah, I think there's a few categories, if you will, that have to be focused on that can always carry, regardless of what level you are. I think some of these fundamentals can stay with you, whether you're a 10-year-old or a 32-year-old in the league. I think they can stay with you. First of all, those upper body fundamentals, I think, are really, really important. The three that I always focus on is having good, solid ball carriage. Sometimes we see this ball being way too low, and that's going to cause, in my opinion, a huge windup, and cause a lot of ball security problems in the pocket. And then sometimes you'll see a quarterback get it too high, and to me, that makes them too robotic. So I think somewhere around that chest area, that throwing pec area is important. Breeze liked it right here around his pec. Brady liked it just a little bit lower. Peyton liked it up here a little bit, but somewhere in that area that feels comfortable. And that's the first thing I think you always got to think about in quarterback development is, who is this guy as an athlete? And we've got to build some fundamentals within this athlete, but we still got to let them be who they are as a person and as an athlete, which I think is really important. The second thing with that ball carriage that is really important is that shoulder turn. A lot of times you see guys don't get that front shoulder to the midpoint of their target. And then what happens is it becomes an all-arm throw. They don't use the upper body torque to develop more velocity. I had 4 shoulder surgeries when I played, so I had to find every which way, to develop, to create as much velocity as I can. And I think that front shoulder come to the midpoint of the target is really important. To me, throwing the football upper body wise is a lot like hitting the baseball. It's not like throwing the baseball. It's like hitting the baseball. And you watch a guy load and he brings that shoulder to the midpoint. He loads on that back foot and then he releases his hips. I think it's really similar in throwing a football as well. And then finally, having a good follow through. And I'm not a stickler on bringing the pointer finger down to the pocket. Some guys like to come across, some guys like to pull it all the way down. What I don't want to see is you stopping your follow through, right, or slowing your follow through down. You can always make your motion more compact, but you certainly don't want to stop your follow through because that's going to hurt you in wind and bad weather and just having a consistent ball. The next phase, I think, is the lower body that we really got to focus on with the weight distribution. I love being 50-50 in the pocket, but once I go to throw, I want to be 70 on that back foot. Coach Lee, David Lee, who coached me at the Dolphins, he loves 80%. And that doesn't mean that we're off balance. It just means we're really loading that back foot to where we're not trying to get to our front foot too fast. Because when we get to our front foot too fast, then we can't, fire our hip, and now it becomes an all-arm throw. And if I'm feeling great that day, I'm accurate. But if I'm not feeling great that day, and a lot of times we don't, then we lose some consistency and accuracy because we're not loading that side. Then, if you're a right-hander, I think you got to make sure you're stepping slightly left of your target a little bit, and you're also keeping your lead knee bent. A lot of times you see that lead knee lock out, and now you shut your hips down, and now you're bending at the waist, and which is now putting more pressure on your arm, and you probably lose velocity because you're not really incorporating your core muscles and things like that to develop the velocity you want. So those would be the two areas as far as true quarterback fundamentals with your upper body and your lower body with those 6 points. I think there's a lot of other things and nuances that guys get into. And I think one of the challenges now is that we're trying to emulate Patrick Mahomes. Well, there's only one of him. Like, there's none of us need to be emulating Patrick Mahomes, right? There's none of us need to be emulating some of these just amazing guys with Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't, as a quarterback, I don't need to emulate Aaron. I can't be Aaron Rodgers, right? But that doesn't mean I can't lead my team and be successful and win championships. So I think one of the things in developing a quarterback is make sure that we're not trying to build our drills or have our kids emulate the top of the top or the guys that are just, they're rare occurrences, right? We need to look at the guys who have a true fundamental set that we know will work for 90% of the people out there, right? And instead of chasing these unicorns, if you will, when it comes to the quarterback position. One of the things that we talked about a while ago, I think what's been lost, especially with the shotgun, is the footwork. And really building a quarterback that understands footwork and how footwork allows him to be on time, how footwork allows him to throw with arc and pace. I think that's really important. I've always said there's a difference between a thrower and a passer. A thrower sees the field in 2 dimensions, and there's a window there. A passer sees the field in 3 dimensions where, yes, there's not a window there, but there's a pocket to get it up and down, get it up over that second level defender before the third level defender comes over. And so if you can see it that way, and the only way you can do that is to throw with arc and pace. And understanding, how to do that. And your footwork allows you to do that too, where, okay, this route is supposed to be with, gun 3 with a reset. I can't reset, but I'm going to hold on my back foot. I'm going to let it go a little earlier, put a little air on it, put it out to the spot because I had a 3 technique in my way. That's playing quarterback. Instead of saying, well, the 3 techniques in my way, let me get out and show how I can run or how I cannot run, right? I mean, there's a reason why the ball always travels faster than the person. And so as quarterbacks, the more we can remain a passer and deliver that football, I think the more successful that our team's going to be. And by the way, when you're running the football, we all know that they're going to hit quarterbacks different than they hit running backs, wide receivers, or tight ends, right? They're not just trying to tackle you. They're trying to put you out. And there's a good reason for that. So the less that we can become, quote, runners and run when we need to and run when the defense gives us that opportunity, then that's when you really, step on the defense and really make it difficult, make their life difficult. So to me, those three things there, upper body, lower body, and footwork, are really, really important to anyone's quarterback development.
I love it. We got to talk to some college quarterbacks and stuff when I was up in, oh man, where was I? Louisville. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, actually, at the AD conference up there, and we had a gentleman come on that had set a whole bunch of records at, I'm forgetting his name now, and he's going to be mad at me, but he talked, and it was kind of the same thing. Just get those fundamentals down from the youngest age up, right? Like, work those key things, and it will go through year after year after year. It'll be good for all of your quarterbacks. And so it sounds like everybody's kind of teaching the same thing, which is good.
As long as we're that footwork thing, I think is important, because you've got, whether it be quick game footwork, you got to make sure, and there's different ways to do it. It's just really sticking to what works in your system, what you think, helps make this quarterback be successful. And then you got your intermediate footwork, you got your bootleg footwork, your rollout footwork, and really understanding the timing of those things, I think, is really, really important.
You think our chance or our wishes to simplify football down has eliminated our ability to teach those as different footworks? I mean, the RPO system, you talked about using Kenny's RPOs. We're kind of like everything is just a 5-step drop, or you're riding the mesh, or it's a sprint out. I mean, it seems like we've eliminated a lot of those true passing fundamentals because we've had to simplify the game down so much.
Well, the shotgun does that too, right? So I grew up in the West Coast system my first 4 years. I mean, you would never get in the shotgun my first 4 years, my first 4 to 5 years in the league. And even in 2 minute, I was going 7-step drop after 7-step drop. I was exhausted. But in that system, because you're underneath, number one, you really learn, okay, I've got to drive away from the center to create my separation, whereas the shotgun, you don't. But then secondly, you had all these unique footworks, a quick three, a long three, a big five, a five plan, a five and a rhythm five, a controlled five, like all these different ones, where the shotgun kind of took some of that away because you already had your separation from the line of scrimmage. However, it actually went the other way, where people thought, well, if I just catch it and I get ready to throw, I can read it. No, to me, your feet take you through the read, right? So if you've got a simple dagger with a shallow, then I'm gonna give one reset to this dagger, and then if it's not there, I may have it on 2, but I'm definitely not throwing the dagger on 3 resets, right? That's bad news. Nothing good happens on that. I should be progressing to my shallow cross by my 2 and 3 resets, and then after that, I'm either finding a check down or I am escaping. So my feet is telling me how to work through that progression, and also protecting me from either holding the ball too long or getting sacked, or telling me, hey, I need to get out, time's up. Where if we're just sitting there bouncing back and forth, you can have a false sense of perception there, or either way, that I need to get out quicker than what I should, or that I need to get out later than what I should. Like, it can go either way there based upon the game. Maybe you're getting big time pass rush that game, so you get a little too antsy. When you go back and look at the film, like, man, if I just stayed in there and threw the football, I'd been fine. Or I'm holding the ball too long. I think it can go either way. And that's why the footwork really helps you keep that more consistent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the lack of footwork in today's world is speeding these clocks up on these quarterbacks, where they don't know, right? There's nothing to count. You just catch the ball,
right,
and you're reading the defender, and you better hope that everything goes exactly the way you wanted, or what do? You're kind of stuck.
Well, and they naturally start looking at the rush, right? I remember in the West Coast system, guys, where on flanker drive, we would throw the hot on drive on the 7th step. We'd have Mike Sam coming, barreling down at us, and they're like, no, stay in there, put your 7th step in the ground, and deliver the football. And it worked. It worked. Whereas today, they'd be running all over the joint, with Mike Sam coming hot. So it's pretty interesting how that's changed.
So I gotta put this one up. Someone, Coach posted this in jest, of course, but going back to you being able to throw to Randy Moss, which you're one of the lucky people that got to do that. Something about it, your development comes along quicker. But really, to ask the question, do the athletes make the development of the quarterback? If they don't have anybody to throw to, do you see that slow their development down because they don't trust the system, just because there's no one out there actually creating separation to get open?
Well, playing with Randy, it can be a double-edged sword, because if you're not careful, you'll be looking at him too much and not progressing through a read and getting to the right place at the right time because you're waiting on him or hoping, whatever it may be. So I would probably shift that a little bit and say the result comes a little bit better and easier with Randy, but the development of you working through a read can be challenging because of who he is and who he was, right? And so that was something that I had to work through to make sure that I just wasn't looking for him all the time. And when they did double him, I needed to get the other guys the ball, which is going to help him out, right? So there was always those conversations back and forth within that development process.
I imagine. I bet he never complained about you not getting him the ball.
Well, number one, I never did have to worry about that because he's going to get the ball. That's the bottom line. Now, there were a couple games where maybe it didn't come as fast to him, quicker in the game than what he thought. But we always going to make sure that the big man was going to touch the rock somehow, some way.
And then Daniel, I'm on this question. I'm not even going to try to compete with Coach on as far as technique. So when I'm looking for a quarterback, all the stuff Coach mentioned, we got to develop that stuff. But I'm not the guy to do that, so I go hire these guys that are like him. But that's their world. They're good at that. They're better than me at that. Here's the things I'm looking for when I'm trying to develop mine. Number one thing I'm trying to get the kid to understand is how to anticipate and know where to look for answers. And Coach kind of mentioned that early on is, can you understand my system enough where you can understand what we're trying to accomplish, anticipate the throw, get the ball out? If you're doing that, that's the number one thing I'm looking for. Number two, as a coach, the game's changed, from the 7-step drop guys. I'm a Dolphin fan. I've already mentioned it. I loved watching Coach play back in the day. I love watching Tua play. But now when I'm picking quarterbacks, I generally am picking the best athlete of the group because I know how much easier it is to play quarterback. Like Coach said, when they panic and run, sometimes those turn out to be the best plays I could have drawn up. So a lot of times I'm looking for what kid can go off script. We're running, like Coach said, we're running dagger. We're running whatever concept you want, and they took it away. What does this kid do? Can I coach this kid up to understand when the ride is over, what his assets are? Each quarterback's different. He already mentioned it. If you've got a good athlete back there and they cover it all up, that means they're rushing less people. So that might be a good thing for you. So a lot of times I'm kind of looking at what can we do off script. We mentioned a little bit earlier too, Coach, I think off air even, I'm looking at understanding the game, knowing the game. It's 2nd and 1 and I call a pass play. I shouldn't have to tell you, but we are going to tell you, don't take a sack, don't throw a pick. If it's not there, throw it away. Understanding on 3rd and 5. What do we want? We don't want you taking off running and getting 3 yards when we want you to sit in the pocket and get the first down. So those are the kind of things that I'm trying to work with not just our quarterback, but our kids on. And then the basic stuff, obviously, like Coach mentioned, how to get it to them. I'm going to go hire someone like Coach that knows a lot more than I do about how that needs to be delivered. I'm trying to focus a little bit more on decision-making, what's happening, are you understand what we're trying to do, game management. And then if I can find that, I'm hoping I can clean them up enough when they throw it that it gets where it's supposed to go.
That game management coach is, I get so frustrated when I hear that used as a negative term. He's a game manager. That's my job as a quarterback, is to manage the game for my team and my coach. I have to be an extension of the play caller and of the head coach. I have to understand what we're trying to get accomplished, and that every situation, every play is unique. And so I have to be able to manage the game, right? And so I always say some of the best decisions you make in a football game are the decisions you don't make. So it may be a first quarter and that dagger, I don't know, right? It's okay, check it down and move on. Instead of you trying to force it in there, now it's a pick going the other way and you completely change the momentum of the game early on when you could have just weathered that storm a different way. So
our quarterback this year, sophomore quarterback this year, and he had a lot of great stats. He's going to be a great one as a junior. But a lot of the biggest stat for me that stood out was he threw 2 picks all year. Like
Yeah.
that was the stat that you go, there's a reason we went to the semifinals. That was probably a huge reason. And both of those were horrible play calls by his coach that were RPOs that were picked. So those were, and he made the right read and they spun a coverage.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault. It was my fault. I think that's where you can win games, is when those kids understand, like you mentioned, don't force things. A lot of times those kids panic and they just sling that ball up there, and
Yeah.
just don't do that.
Yeah. Amen for that. Two things that I just reminded. Yeah, that was the same way with us for the last 2 years. Our quarterback had 50 touchdowns and 0 interceptions as a junior, 53 and 4 as a senior. And
Right.
so that ball security is so important. And then the other thing, Coach, I think is important with the RPO system that I've also noticed has kind of taken away some of the quick game concepts that we learned before the RPO. And so I think within a system, still having your quick game within your RPOs, to where it's not just an RPO, it's just solid quick game. That's part of the quarterback development, I think, because number one, quick game allows a quarterback to learn a read progression without it being too expensive, right? It's also great confidence builder for the O-line, because they're not looking back there and the guy's sitting on his backside because the ball's coming out on time, right? And then third, I mean, you think about it, quick game, you can take that all the way to 3rd and 8. You can take double slant to 3rd and 8, hit a slant, and boom, you've got the first down. So there's still a nice place in our game, I think, for quick game, where some guys have abandoned it a little bit.
What we're doing this year, I hope I don't want to spoil it. I'm sure it's going to get out when people see it. Is now we're starting to run. Miami started running a little bit ago. We're running quick game, then we're running a little deeper, kind of mid-range game, and we're pairing it with that swing screen to the back.
Mm-hmm.
So we're running a 2-receiver concept down the field, deep, looking for it. If we don't like it, we're letting our little wing, which is my son, get out there and lead block for our all-state running back on a swing route. And
I've
so
seen guys do that out of trips too, right? With that off tight end and kind of do some of that stuff. Is that what?
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, that is good stuff. I need to take a look at that for sure.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff, because you're looking downfield, one read. If you don't like it, you're dumping the ball out to a lead screen.
Yeah. So it's like having a check down with a lead blocker. You can't go up and then run play than that. Right?
Right. Well, McDaniel started doing it, and he does it in the red zone. Like if you watch him, he does it in the high red zone all the time. I'm like, how are these Dolphins getting? Tua's getting the world's easiest touchdowns by just swinging it out there, and the guy's got a lead blocker versus man. It's been really, really good. So sorry, Dane, I know we're off topic.
No, you're good. A couple more questions here, and then we'll move on. So you talked earlier, Coach, about people emulating Mahomes, and everybody's trying to be. Are we forcing that as coaches? Because a lot of times, and Kenny already kind of alluded to this, but one, I don't think there's enough of us out there know how to make a good quarterback. And so we're replacing that true quarterback with an athlete, because, by God, you can take everything away, but if I can put the run game in with the quarterback, I've got the extra hat, right, in high school football. So do you think that we're kind of creating our own worst enemy there with this, having to emulate the guys that are just one?
Well, a couple things. The advent of fantasy football has brought in a sense of individualism into a game that, is strictly a team game, right? And it doesn't matter. Like I was even telling my team last week, if you put LeBron James on Sayre School's basketball team, you win the state championship. If Clayton Kershaw's on the baseball team, you win. You put Tom Brady on our team, we're not guaranteed to win the state. It takes those other 10 guys, those other 11 guys on defense, and especially like there's so many other factors that go into that, right? And so now to your point, I think social media is part of that. Like kids are looking for that, that TikTok, that Instagram, that YouTube, that one flash of a play, instead of just consistency of play in and play out. And I remember Bill Parcells saying, listen, we're going to judge you by 3 things. Do you hit what you're aiming at? Can you avoid disasters? And do you put your team in the end zone? Those are the 3 things we're going to grade you by as a quarterback. And I think that still holds true, especially when you look at even the higher levels, but even in high school, I think it bodes true, is that more games are lost than they're won when you really look at it. And you can go back and look at the games that you lose and man, you take away those 2 plays there, those 2 mistakes, we're right where we need to be, right? And so, and then the third thing to your question there, I do think that because those plays are so sexy, because those plays are so, riveting as a fan, we think we need to emulate those instead of just when those happen, they happen. But we can't force those to happen, right? And there's only certain people that can do them, but each quarterback within their own athleticism, they can make great plays. But it's like we do a mentorship program at the Combine each year. And so Tyler Shuck and I'm gonna talk about Tyler here. He was in my group. And so here he is, we're throwing routes, and they're throwing the dagger route at the Combine, and he takes his drop. Well, he tries to act like he's going to miss a rusher, and then flips it out and completely one-hops it to the dagger. And I'm like, Tyler, you're good enough as it is, man. Don't worry about being too cute. Those plays will come when they need to come. You don't need to show that now. Just focus in on the simple stuff, the basics. Hit the dagger like you're supposed to hit it. He's like, yes, sir. So but that's where our kids kind of get caught up into kind of looking too cute or making something more out of what it should be.
Yeah, we had a wide receiver in my first year that probably could have been All-State. And you're in practice, and it doesn't matter what round he ran. He's shaking them off at the goal. At the line of scrimmage, right? Like he's dancing, and he goes run his route. Like, dude, you're better than everyone else on the field. You don't have to dance at all. Just run, and you're going to outrun every dude on this field. Both teams, like. So I got you there.
Yeah, you've got off coverage, and they're making some type of jam move at the line of scrimmage.
Cover three.
Get vertical, man. Go right now,
Yeah, it was at the time, I think even I was such a new coach, my first year in the game, I think I was impressed. Like, this kid looks like an athlete. And my head coach was like, he looks like an idiot. 10-4. Next question here. When does reading a defense come into your quarterback development? We had a big conversation. I'm a military veteran, and I'm in a military veterans group on Twitter. We have a whole text group thing, but they're all coaches, and they were kind of talking about these collegiate quarterbacks who fall off after throwing 50, 60 touchdowns a year or whatever in high school. But it's because back then defense was easy to read. Everybody was running 1 or 3, and now they got to read all this stuff, and they're skilled, can't get them there. Mm-hmm. So when do you add that in? Like, when do we start reading a defense to add that anticipation that Kenny talked about? When do you, is that middle school? Is that high school? When do you try to add that in?
Well, I think, first of all, I think in middle school, you can stick to progression reads, and through your play calling and knowing what you're going to get, you're going to give them the proper progressions. But they're also going to, as they're reading their progression, they know that they're still looking at a certain defender. They don't need to look at the whole picture. But that certain defender, as they're working through the progression, dictates, okay, I'm getting off of number 1, moving to 2 and 3. Typically in middle school, you're going to be 1 to 2. But on your rollouts and your bootlegs, you can teach a triangle. You can teach a 1, 2, and 3. And then he's the 4th option. Now, as you get into college, especially, or into high school, especially as they move into their sophomore, junior, senior year, I do think you can get a little bit more complicated, if that's the right word, where you can do some 2 safety, 1 safety stuff. You can do some high-low, and then you'll still have your progression reading as well. So there's a little bit more flexibility there, and I think there should be some flexibility there. Now, and then within your read system, then you still want to be teaching the why. Like I think part of the issue that I see in today's football is kids know how and what, but they truly don't know why. And I can't prepare a player for every eventuality in a game. But if I teach him the why, he'll make that adjustment for me on Friday night, even though he didn't get that rep Monday through Thursday, because he understands why he's doing what he's doing. And so being able to have true football conversations with your kids and talking about those little nuances and details, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but giving them tools in their toolbox to make those plays and adjustments for you on the run, I think is really, really important. So even within a read system, as you're teaching them reading the number 1 defender, let's just say on a simple, fade and a quick out, and we're reading the number 1 defender, which is the corner. Within that, you're also talking about what 2 looks like, what 4 looks like, what 3 looks like. And so they're also learning, okay, this in 2, here's the flat defender, and it is the corner. But in quarters, it's the number 2 defender that becomes the flat defender. They're playing a little bit 2 read. Now, what's that look like, coach? What does that mean? Like all those different things. So having those conversations with them where you're still reading the number 1 defender. You're reading the corner. It doesn't matter what the coverage is. That's who you're reading. But giving the why behind the coverages they may be seeing, to me, is a good thing to do.
Yeah,
love it.
I'd be curious to hear coach's thoughts on this because he's played at all the levels: high school, college, professional. I'm not so sure that these college kids that are going to the pros is all on them for not reading the defense as much as it is some of these professional coaches taking a square peg and trying to shove it through a round hole. Because you see consistently NFL teams that, like, if I get drafted by the Packers, I'm going to be a good quarterback. Now, they've had some good ones, but they always develop them. And if I'm going to get drafted by insert a name, not going to say the Bears, but let's just say them, okay, I'm going to have a really hard time because they clearly have shown they don't know how to develop these guys. So I don't know if it's always on the kid that's coming out of college as much as it is about, man, they got put in a really bad situation.
Well, especially at the pro level, coach, I've always said we ruin more quarterbacks at the pro level than we actually develop. I mean, there's way too much arm talent in that league not to get better quarterback play.
Right.
And I think, first of all, it starts with the footwork and the fundamentals. Like, we've lost the technician part of this game. And now we've got the play callers and the scheme builders. And as a quarterback, I don't need you to tell me I missed the number 1 read. I know I can see that on film, right? Can you tell me why? Was it that I didn't close my shoulder down on the out route and that's why I missed the route? Did I lock out my knee? So the why of the technician piece, we've lost some of that. And I was coached by some of the greatest technicians, and one of the greatest is David Lee. He's my quarterback coach in Miami, and he had 30 years of SEC experience and 17 in the league, and still, coaches quarterbacks down in that area now. But, he was really big on focusing in on your footwork, your base, all those little nuances as to why you missed that throw, right? Instead of just saying, hey, you missed it, you got to hit it. Well, thanks, but I need some answers there, right? And so the technical part of the why, I think, is what we have been lacking for some time.
All right, last one on this part, Coach, is from a guest or from somebody that's watching right now, Coach Mark out of Chino, California. Best advice: develop a strong-arm quarterback with an undersized O-line. And he says, thank you for everything. So I think that's what he's asking. If you got a guy that's just got a real arm, but the O-line is undersized, kind of how do you get that kid going? How do you develop him?
Yeah, well, I do understand the undersized O-line piece because, on our state championship team this year, we had one guy over 200. So
let's go. 1A ball, right?
So one is forget the quarterback piece. Let's talk about pass protection, right? What are we doing in pass protection? And I think that too many times, even at every level, we stay in too much man pass protection. Because if you go down to one-on-one pass rush, the O-line does not win those battles, period. They're going against more superior, better athletes. And so the more pass protection that you can build where it's slide or even full turn, where they're working together in tandem, they know where their sideboards are, they know where their help is, that's going to create that umbrella type of pocket that a strong arm quarterback needs, because he can sit back there and deliver the football. But if that pocket's moving like an amoeba and he's moving and jiving and shaking, he can't use his best talent, which is his arm strength. And so with a big, strong arm guy, I want to make sure that pocket is as firm as it can be, where from guard, center, guard, it's firm right there, and they're running them up the rails on the outsides. And the guys know, where are my sideboards? Is it a back coming in the B gap where the right guard knows that I've got help on my right side and the right tackle knows I got help on my left side? Is it a chip? What is it to firm that up? And then, because he is a strong arm guy, you don't have to have a 4-man concept. Like a lot of times, like guys will build concepts where really the quarterback's only reading the right side, but they have the formation spread out all over the field. Why not close the left side down, block it up, and let him read a 2 to 3 man progression over there? Because his arm's so strong, it don't matter. He's not going to get to the other side anyway. right? So there's things that you can do protection-wise to where you're giving the perception that you're in 5 to 6 man protection, but you actually may be in 7 and 8 because you're just running a 2-man route over here because I got a big dude that can fire the football, and we don't need to make it complicated. But if we don't protect the guy, no one can throw on their back no matter how good he is, right? So that pass protection thing, I think, is really important and not looked at enough as the routes are being built and as the development of the quarterback is happening.
And I think you throw in play action in that too. Play action, move the pocket, buy him some time, let the route develop down the field a little bit more. Same deal. I think Coach hit the nail on the head, especially at the high school level. I have very rarely have I seen a kid who can really read full field, especially. I mean, you can see him some, but probably they cheated and they said if it's a 2 high, look to the right. If it's a 1 high, look to the left. They're really not reading both sides. So protect with 7 or 8, move the pocket, boot them, let your route develop. I think that's not used enough.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And the quarterback movement, I think that dash pass concept, I've studied that's a great little concept. That's very inexpensive, for the offensive line and obviously your rollouts and your boots, your play actions, all that stuff. And you don't have to have, a ton of them, but if you just got a little bit here and there and you're mixing in that pass protection, because the reason why we don't normally read full field because we don't have time to do that. Right. So it doesn't matter if you have full field or not. Like, typically that clock gets to 3 or 4 seconds. It's time to roll, so it's, it can, that I agree with Coach on that.
Awesome. We'll move into the second part here, Coach, now. So top things that ruin a young quarterback before their career kind of ever gets going. We talked about, I already said, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of great quarterback coaches out there, especially I've been a small school ball most of my career. I jumped up to the top league in Oklahoma for 1 year, but you just don't hire guys like that because they do go off to the bigger leagues. It's hard to keep them down at small school ball. A little jest there for you. You said you looked the same as you did in 2000.
Yeah, I see that. I'm glad to know that.
There we go. A little Nicolas Cage black magic going on, man. So kind of what are some things that you've seen that's ruined quarterbacks? You said it earlier, the league does it, right? They ruin more careers than develop. So where have we seen that with youth or high school, especially now you've been down there a few years?
Well, the first way is that if you believe you should coach the quarterback the same way you coach other positions, you're wrong. It's the hardest position in all of sports, and even at the youth level, really understanding the kid, understanding the environment around him, and knowing how to be firm, but also loving and understand, because you can ruin that entire relationship between the team and the quarterback just on how you handle the quarterback. And how you handle the quarterback, speak to the quarterback is either going to give the team the license to do that or not the license to do it. And so you have to understand that dichotomy there and understand how important that dynamic is with your relationship piece to it, with how you're coaching it. That doesn't mean you're being soft on them, but how you would rip an offensive lineman is not going to be how you rip a quarterback. And if you do that, you'll completely destroy it. But so just the language and the approach, I think, is where you first start, right? And then from there, depending upon the skill set, if you're asking a kid to do something that he quite frankly can't do or doesn't do as well as someone else, then that's the next piece to you leading him down the wrong path, because you're not working within the skill set that he has. Because in my opinion, playing quarterback, there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? And it's understanding and first of all, it's that relationship between you and the quarterback, and then you understanding what he does well and build that system around what he does well. I can even look at all my 3 boys, and how I built the system for Cole is different than how it's for Luke. It's going to be different than how it's for Gage. Now, are there similarities in there? Yes, but there's little nuances that are totally different. And so understanding that, I think is really important.
Yeah, I love it. Finding that they're different. I think that even at the highest level, you see that square peg round hole over and over and over. I'm a guy that have a system that guys get, and they're run everywhere. And I got to go do a couple installs. I got to do 3 installs this June, and all of them had different quarterbacks. So all of their offenses, while they had the same bones, needed to be different because the way the kids were. One of them had a great athlete. One of them had a kid who was not as athletic, but pretty good little decision maker. One of them had one that kind of had both of them. So you kind of build to what they can do. And Coach mentioned it. I think you have to tweak what you do to fit them, not the other way around. I think too many times as a coach, we want to throw the ball and then we get a kid back there that's not really his strength. Maybe his strength is running the ball and making good decisions. And he's not a guy you want to throw it 30 times a game with. You want to throw it 12 times a game with and protecting him. I think play calling. I think you can kill a kid by only letting him throw the ball in unfriendly quarterback downs. Like your kid finished 3 of 14 throwing the ball. Well, you were 3 of 14 on 3rd and 12s. That's your fault as a coach. Like you didn't throw it once on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 3. You didn't give him any boots. You didn't give him any screens. I've done that before where we want to run the ball. I'm kind of a run guy. People know that. And I look up and, our quarterback's 2 of 8 because I've only thrown the ball in the worst possible situation for that kid. So I think your play calling matters a ton. I also think as far as how you handle the quarterback in times where they're good, because like I mentioned, I usually will pick the best athlete. So that's usually kind of where we start. We don't always end there, but we start there. So that kid has probably gotten away with things not being done correctly, and it worked anyway. You guys have seen that Patrick Mahomes kind of no, yes. You got to make sure in the film sessions, not in front of the team, but the film sessions, it's known to him, hey, at some point, the defense will be as fast as you are, and this won't work. We've got to get this stuff out of our system, these habits where you're playing an inferior team, so your timing's not on, and you got away with it. You didn't make the right read, but you threw it to this kid who's a freak, and he made a play. Like, we got to coach that stuff so that when it comes down to they're as good as you are, he's ready for that. A lot of times we just ignore it because it worked. And then now the first time you play somebody who can match you, that doesn't work. So I think, again, how you talk to him matters. Coach hit the nail on the head with that. They need to be coached different because they have the most pressure on them than any other position. But you do have to coach them. Like, you can't allow some great athlete to get away with stuff and build up a resentment with everybody else. So there's kind of a fine balance you got to have with that guy.
I love it. My little piece here is I kind of worry sometimes because the kids that are quarterbacks are also the kids that are usually pitchers on the baseball team. And we know that baseball is now like a 9-month out of the year sport or whatever, right? They have to ask off from baseball to come play football for us sometimes. So I worry about the kid that's always slinging it, getting overworked, and physically ending their career, ruining their career before they can kind of get it off the ground just due to that. I don't know that everyone sees the same issues, but I kind of see that around here quite a bit. And these kids are like taking off AAU or taking off out of summer weights to go to travel ball. And I mean, they're playing baseball right up to the point that they got to put on the shoulder pads and helmet in August. So I worry that those kids, because they are, kind of worth their weight in gold. You got a kid that can go out there and sling it. Like, I mean, everybody wants them, and everybody wants them competing year round. I wonder sometimes if they don't get enough time off.
No, there's no doubt they don't get enough time off. I mean, that's one of the things that I see is that kids no longer work on their skill set. They're always performing. And when you're performing, you're never going to work on your weakness. You're going to go right to what your strength is because you're trying to win. And so, I always call it the chemistry lab. Our kids don't get in the chemistry lab enough and work on things. So, for instance, like when we do our Arc and Pace camp here in Kentucky, that's the first thing I tell them. Like, your goal these next 3 sessions is to fail. Like, you're not here to perform. You're here to work and rep and figure it out on what works and doesn't work, what throws you can make, what you can't make, what decisions you can make, what all those different things. Because how do you ever know what success is if you haven't failed at it? What true success is anyway. So, really giving our kids the forum to go out and just work on things. Like, we've lost that. One of my favorite times as a college and professional athlete was a bag of 6 footballs and a net by myself. And I could work at my tempo, my pace, because really as a player, we can fake a coach out and act like we know what we're doing. But deep down inside, we know, no, I need to tweak that. Like coach thinks I can do it, but I really don't feel good about that right now. Right. And so how do you ever work on those little things if you constantly have to be in perform mode all the time? And with the travel ball and all these things, and with, I get some of it, but a lot of it I don't. I truly don't. Some of it I think it's unnecessary. I think, really working on your skills and doing those things are really more important than, quote, the next ball game, so to speak.
That's one thing that I really hate about what 7-on-7 has become for our players, because it used to be a training set, right? Like you went out and you got reps against a team that you probably aren't going to play. They're going to play maybe a defense you're not going to see a lot of. And you just get work doing your job. It don't matter if you're receiver, running back, obviously running backs are receivers in that league, or you're the quarterback, you kind of get to work on the thing that Kenny, you already said, you're run heavy. So your quarterback ain't going to throw the ball a lot in the real season. So they get to go out and work on getting
we won our
better
first
at that.
7-on-7 this millennium, I think, the other day. We threw it probably more time than we're going to throw it all year.
Yeah, but now even that's become a performance. I love the way you said that, man, because now it's heck, in Oklahoma, you can't even practice 7-on-7. You just can go to tournaments. That's it. That's what we get allowed here. I think you can do like a weekly camp for 7-on-7 for a month or something, but it's not enough time to work on the thing. Great, we got an extra tool in the summertime to go out and get better at football, but now it's just become a money grab, and it's another chance to get another trophy. Great, but man, I love what you said there. Kids are still having to go out and perform. There is no getting better at that because coach is throwing the route that works. He's throwing the route that his quarterback can complete. We're not going to throw to fail. We're not going to go out there and purposely lose the game. You know what I mean?
So they're keeping score and they're trying to win, right?
They're trying to win. That's right. We threw. You'll like this, Coach Pennington. So we played a whole game. Our quarterback comes back, so we throw about 3 routes. We throw flood, we throw snag, we throw stick. That's pretty much about all we're going to throw because that's what we're going to do. And our quarterback comes in and goes, Coach, we've thrown more snag in this tournament than I can remember us throwing for years. I said, yeah, because we got a really good X. The last few years, that guy had been able to catch a cold.
Right.
I'm pulling the dang curl right to that guy.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So we went a little longer than I expected to, Coach. I'll be very respectful of your time. So we're going to scratch the multi-quarterback thing. We'll pick you up maybe another week or something and see if we can get you. So let's jump into our situation of the day. This is a new piece for the podcast. We're going to talk 2-minute offense. It was on your top 3 things, so I was like, we might as well let the man speak. So talk to us about that situation. It's 2 minutes. I assume halftime or into the game, but we got to go down and make things happen.
Well, I think first of all, I think sometimes we can get too cute with 2-minute offense and actually do too much. So within our system, it's one formation, period. And we know when we call NASCAR, we're jumping in that formation. They know where to line up. That's important. Number 2, it's one snap count. We know what that is, right? And so the efficiency of the system is more important than the schemes themselves. Whereas, and then the third thing is the use of code words and understanding the situational awareness of, okay, hey, where do we need to get for our kicker? Or do we need a touchdown? Or do we have timeouts, or do we really need to put an emphasis on getting out of bounds? What if we get a first down? What if we need to chunk? We need to spike it? Like all these different situations. What I think is the really cool part of it, and teaching kids that part of it. But to me, I'd written down, the efficiency of the system as well as the familiarity is the most important thing. If your kids are familiar with what you're doing and they understand the efficiency, because time is of the essence. And I see so many 2 minutes situations where so much time is wasted with running guys here and there and trying to get in different formations and all of these things. Like, I know as a quarterback in college and the pros, I wanted to call that. I wanted to call the 2-minute system. And I knew that, what I was trying to do, get the ball out of bounds. So then my offense coordinator could call one of the plays he needed to call from his base stuff. And then boom, we jump right back into the 2-minute offense and start the cycle over again. But there's some times where I see so much time wasted on the inefficiency of the system and the operation when all they're trying to do is run flat slant. I mean, what are we doing? Like we should be able to do that in our sleep and line up in any formation, any personnel and run flat slant or whatever it may be. And so that's to me the key to good 2-minute offense. And I'll give you an example. We're in a state championship game this year, 9-7. The opponent's up. We get the ball with 1:35 on our 35, no timeouts, and boom, we jump right into the system. And actually, we didn't run the 2-minute system play after play after play because we had a stoppage of clock. I'd get into a play, and then boom, our quarterback would get us right back in the 2-minute system. We ended up scoring on that drive, and we go into halftime 14-9 against a run-powered team. And playing with the lead for us was really important to keep them uncomfortable, and it changed the game for us. Whereas if we weren't efficient in that situation, coming out with them having the ball up 9-7 is different than then coming out with them having the ball down 14-9. And so it played a big part in the state championship game.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things I've got, Daniel, is like you got to practice this stuff because most of the time coaches said it. We think, well, the kids need to practice this. Well, bull crap, we need to practice this stuff as a play caller. Like as a play caller, we need as much practice as they do about how we're going to handle subs, like he said. What if I called trips and I called it wrong, but I want to move the trips? Well, that's going to take 30 seconds. So that's the kind of like I've called plays for 20 years, and I still need the practice in August of going through 2-minute drill because, like he mentioned, those are probably the most important situations of your season. Are in those moments. You don't want to screw it up as a play caller, and you definitely don't want your kids uncomfortable. Second thing I want to bring up on this, we don't condition. Like I don't believe in condition. I'm a big Tony Holler fan. How we do condition is we run 2-minute drill on air pretty much every single day throughout the preseason. And even during the season, we work a situation which generally involves some version of 2-minute offense. So we're getting that 2 or 3 times a week. Like to do it if we can versus bodies, but worst case, let's at least do it against air. So our kids are kind of getting used to this stuff. And you can also mix in last minute field goal. You can mix in, we got to score with 10 seconds from the 30. You can mix in all this kind of stuff if you work it a bunch. And our kids are going to work really hard because what you find out real quickly is you can't fake it when you're moving fast because they can't ask their buddies. Like they can ask their buddies at normal pace, and what route do I have on this? And I only have 3 routes. Well, you'd think we would know that. They can ask that, but if we're moving fast up tempo, you find out real quick that kid's not ready to be out there in this situation. That kid's not ready to be out there in this situation. And either you can coach it up or get those kids off and someone else on. We kind of have certain kids that, hey, game's on the line, we know they know what to do. So that's a big thing for us. The final thing I want to mention on this one is I think we need as much work on this defensively as we do offensively.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of it on offense. We did not do a lot of it on defense. And this year we're playing a team week 0, which is like our first week. I don't know why they call it 0. Playing a team week 0, there's 30 seconds left. And guess whose son is playing safety who gives up a post route on 3rd and 10 for a touchdown? So the guy that probably should know the most, the head coach's son, comes over there and he goes, I just forgot how much time was left. He bit on the dig. Well, that's his read, and you work quarters. He's supposed to bite on the dig, but not when there's 30 seconds to go in a half. And this is probably our highest IQ football kid we have. Well, you know how much 2-minute drill defense we had done that preseason? 0. We had done 0. We did a lot of offense. We've done 0 defense. So that's not his fault. That's my fault. So I think the 2-minute stuff is not just good on offense. It's good for defense. It's good for special teams. And it's good for the coaches trying to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love that. It's good.
All right, let's get in last piece here. Top 5 quarterbacks of all time.
Here we go.
Your favorite top 5. Coach Pennington, we're going to start with you. Can't put yourself on the list.
I wouldn't put myself on the list anyway. What you want to go 1 through 5 or 5 up to 1?
Ooh,
we'll go bottom to top. Bottom to top.
Bottom to top. Okay. Coming in at number 5, Drew Brees. Always was a fan of him. You're talking about a guy who could throw with arc and pace, and did it, with a 6 foot to 6'1" body frame in a time that the 6'3", 6'4" quarterback was still dominating the game. I always loved what he did. So that's number 5. Number 4, Tom Brady. Competed against him for years on end. And this is also me from a quote fan perspective too. So this is how I built this list, and I'll give you the reasons why as I move up. But always just truly loved his preparation in the game. I'll never forget because I was part of the first game that he came in when Drew Bledsoe went down. I was on the sideline, and Vinny Testaverde was playing, and he comes in and we're up 10-3. He's trying to lead them on a 2-minute drive to tie us up. And I'll never forget, we stopped him probably on the 20 going in. And I just saw the look on his face, and he was devastated that he did not lead his team to victory, where most young quarterbacks would be like, man, I got a chance to play, got my feet wet, yada, yada. No, this cat was mad that he did not lead his team to tie us up. And right then and there, I'm like, there's something different about that dude, right? And so I always respected his competitive drive. Number 3, Peyton Manning. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he was a little bit ahead of me, but always just from that preparation standpoint, the fundamental standpoint, really taking the quarterback position, I believe, to the next level in, deciphering defenses and calling plays and getting in and out of checks and audibles and just understanding the why to everything. I've always respected that. And really in college, because I was a year or two behind him, I always tried to, build my game and really pay attention to how he was doing things, to be honest with you. And then finally, the last 2 coming in at number 2, and this is me being a straight fanboy. So I was early in the 80s growing up, I was a 49ers fan, and then I flipped to the Cowboys in the 90s. So coming in at number 2, just because, is Troy Aikman. I love watching him throw the glance route to Michael Irvin. Those Cowboy teams were pretty awesome. He was one of those guys that really, you watch his footwork and just everything fundamental was sound as could be. And he was a winner. And then finally at number 1 is Joe Montana. And, I remember watching him in the 80s and just how cool, calm, and collected he was, and wasn't known to have the strongest of arms or the fleetest of feet, but just the accuracy, the sense of timing. He was a really good athlete. I remember watching when I first got to New York, and Paul Hackett was our offense coordinator. He'd bring out some old Montana stuff, and we'd watch him throwing to Rice in practice and things like that. And just watching him, work his feet and work his arm was pretty special. So Breeze, Brady, Manning, Aikman, and Montana.
A good list, Coach. I'm gonna furball it up, Daniel, and you can do yours here in a minute. I'm going to the top 5 Dolphin quarterbacks because that was my franchise to go through, and our guest of honor is on my list here. So I'm going top 5 Dolphin quarterbacks. Number 5 from the bottom, Ryan Tannehill. I really respect the guy as a person. I think he's one of the toughest dudes I've ever seen play football. Real athletic. I think he was a guy that unfortunately a lot of Dolphin fans don't give enough respect to. A good quarterback.
Yeah.
Number 4 for me is the current Dolphin quarterback, Mr. Tua. I'm hoping he continues to move up my list. He may pass our buddy here if he keeps playing well, if we can keep him healthy. But he actually reminds me a lot of Coach here. Reminds me a lot of Drew Brees if we can just keep him healthy. Anticipates it well. Really a guy you root for. Hope he plays well. Number 3 for me is Chad Pennington. I can remember our last AFC East title, and it was due in large part to this guy who came and brought a 1-15 team and took us to win the AFC East title. One of my favorite seasons that I've ever had as a fan. When you're 1-15, the next year you're winning the division title. It's a big deal. So huge memory for me and my brothers. Number 2 was my dad's guy. It's Bob Greasy.
Yeah.
I'm not quite that old, so I never got to watch him play except for the old stuff. But he does have the only championships as a Dolphin quarterback, so you got to give him his due. And then the guy I grew up on in the 80s when Coach was over here watching Montana win championships was a guy who I think is the best quarterback to never win a championship, and that's Dan Marino. I think the best pure passer. I don't even know if his footwork was great, but my goodness gracious, that arm was unbelievable.
His footwork was pretty good, Coach. He was very compact. I mean, it was up and out. There was no wasted motion. He always had a great base. And you're talking about firing the hip now. He can fire the hip big time.
Yes, he could. Yes, he could.
Well, since we're moving goalposts, mine are going to be my favorites because went through not watching a lot of NFL growing up. We just watched the Cowboys, so Troy Aikman's on the list because he was my favorite team's quarterback, and so he was my Emmitt Smith is the greatest running back of all time. I don't care what Barry Sanders did. He shouldn't have gone to Oklahoma State, and I might have liked him a little bit more. But it's like Michael Irvin, amazing. Moose Johnson years, like we just have all the greats, right? All the best players ever to do the NFL were at the Cowboys in the 90s. So that's the bottom line. My favorite quarterbacks, number 5, Josh Allen. And it's because I am a high school football coach, and I just want quarterbacks to want to go just bloody their nose, running the dadgum football. And I love turning it on this year. They were in the snow, and I want to say it was like coming out of halftime, and it was a drive of just Josh Allen running the football. And I think they ended up scoring on the drive. Maybe he tossed a short one in or something. But like that mentality to do it in the snow, do it when you're uncomfortable, do it no matter what. That's like a leader to me. Maybe it's my military side. I don't know. Troy Aikman is my number 4. Like I said, getting to grow up watching him all the rings, which what did he get, 3 or whatever? We wanted more. But not every dynasty can last forever. Aaron Rodgers is my number 3. And it's because I always just thought he was the realest dude ever. Like, it didn't matter. When you watch him in interviews, he always seemed really cool. I'm a big Pat McAfee fan. So, like, when I get to watch him come on Pat McAfee show, that might be the only times I tune in anymore. Is for Aaron Rodgers days, So it's like, I just love the way he lives life, and it's different from everyone else, and he doesn't care. And I like those kind of people. My 1 and 2 as favorites could definitely either one be flipped. I have it in this order. Number 2, Tom Brady. And I hated him the entire time he was with the Patriots, and he moved down to Tampa Bay, and I am now a Tampa Bay fan because of him. But I don't know if it was like my coming of age as a coach and then kind of this internet stuff where we started podcasting and just seeing how much people don't know about the game, that you kind of grow up thinking like every NFL coach must be the smartest coach ever in the land, right? Because they're in the NFL. And then as a high school coach for years, I thought, well, college coaches must know so much more than me because they're in college. And then I start interacting with people and I'm like, 5 years of podcasting may have made me a better coach than situationally and football IQ than a lot of guys at every level. Like there's no, just because you're in the NFL, you're the best to ever do it. No. But Tom Brady has maintained that, like his IQ and his preparation and his commitment to the game and going and like, it wasn't a fluke that the dude is a champion multiple times over because he's like, he'll kind of sacrifice everything, right, to go win the game for his team. And I just love that. And throwing a big LFG right there coming off the field, like, to start the game, like, let's go, just fires me up. Puts my number 1 favorite, and that is Baker Mayfield. 100% because I'm an OU graduate. I went to many of his games, but he is just a fiery little dude. And I think that it might be a Nick Foles type Super Bowl where like that guy, maybe he gets one and everyone calls it a fluke and he moves on with life and never gets another one. I don't know, but he's got at least 1 ring in his future. I love the way he plays ball. He's just mad at the world. Always kind of been undersized and he's the double walk on, right? He walks on to Tech and gets a thing, and he walks on to OU and gets a scholarship. Like, if you go walk on to Heisman, there's something about you. You've just got the it factor. And as a coach who we don't get NFL players, we kind of get kids that just kind of go out there and have some moxie that they probably don't really deserve to have. That's the kind of guy I can just kind of fall in love with. Like, let's go. So Baker Mayfield, favorite quarterback in the league all time. If it was more than 5, I would mention a lot of the same ones that Coach Pennington did because look, the Sheriff is amazing.
On our list, by the way. So
do what?
I said I think Coach Pennington won if people are ranking our list on
this. For sure. If it's like best all-time quarterbacks, 100%. But you moved the goalpost, so it allowed me to. So I just went with favorites. Sweet, man. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's knock out a couple ads real quick, just short ones. Go to acesports.com or email mark.bridges@acesports.com if you want to talk to anybody about the billboards. Go back and watch the ad. Call Kenny or message him, email him, something. He's been using Ace Sports multiple schools now. Very successful with their program and what they do for teams. A walking billboard for the billboard company. There you go, Kenny. Team Builder Practice. Month of June's coming to a close. If you're watching this live, you've still got it. I think this comes out 2 Sundays, so it may be over by then. I'll talk to the reps and see if we can get it extended. But they're doing the 30 days free like a free trial if you sign up now. Jump in there, man. Team builder practice is going to be the next really neat thing to get coaching staffs all on the same focus, kind of on the same team. Winning Edge Performance Analytics. This is one of the coolest things coming from a single coach. This isn't a big company out to get your money. This is one guy who developed a program that I think is going to win you more football games than any sled or device you can put on the football field, more than a timer that has music, all of that. This is the thing that you're all game long. You're tracking stats, but it's not just who got the most rushing yards, who's beating me right now, or who's my bell cow that I can lean to because they're actually being successful. We're being efficient. When are we not? And you can make those adjustments at halftime, on the fly, whenever you want, and still you get to export it and import it right into Huddle and quit tagging your film so your younger coaches don't screw that stuff up either. Anyway, that's our sponsors. Jumping out of here, social media. Coach Pennington, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and talk a little quarterback development, where would they reach out to you at?
Well, I think probably the best thing to do is kind of like what Coach Simpson did the other day, and just DM me on Twitter. And that's always a simple way. And I've learned, I serve as co-executive director in the NFL Legends community, which is our initiative to help guys as they transition away from the game. But it's interesting how, this generation, and I've learned this through our retirement community. You got generations communicate differently, right? So your baby boomers, you got to call them. You may be able to email them, but that's about it, right? Your Gen Xers, you can definitely call them, text them, and email them. You get all the way to these dudes here in this generation. You could text them, you could call them, you can email them on the same device, and they won't answer. But if you direct message them, they're all over it, right? So let's just say direct message on Twitter would be fine, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. That's good to know. What's your Twitter handle, Coach?
At Chad Pennington.
That's pretty easy.
I need to get verified. I need to call the NFL and get them to verify me, so everybody make sure they know it's me. But it's at Chad Pennington. Yeah.
Perfect.
We'll let Elon know that we need to verify.
Yeah.
We'll hit him up later.
Yeah, I'm screwing up by saying Twitter. I need to say X, don't I?
Yeah,
direct message
right there.
X. There we go.
That's another 6-month delay right there, Coach. You got to wait now. If you want to talk to me, you can hit me up at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I do have a website. I've not touched it in 6 months, so it's probably not the best place to try to contact me. It's just basically the place that all the episodes go when we get done with these podcasts. And then patreon.com /Chamberlain Football Consulting. If you need an additional staff member this year, if you need someone to help you with graphics, with planning practice, if you need someone to help design a uniform, anything you need help with to go win football games, I can help you out. Patreon.com. Pick a tier that looks good to you. If there's not one, hit me up and we'll make one for you. I don't care. I just like helping coaches. And then there's the YouTube at Coach Chambo OK. Kenny, where can they find you, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So at FB Coach Simpson, FBCoachSimpson.com, FBCoachSimpson@gmail.com.
Awesome. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter /X. I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way. And Coach, if you'll hang on, let's go through this video and then we'll close her out after that.